Man returned from the army and saw his wife eating grass. Her explanation shocked him. David Johnson walked down the dirt road leading to his home on the outskirts of Fresno, California, carrying his military backpack on his shoulders. 2.5 years had passed since he left for a humanitarian mission in the Alaskan wilderness, and now he was finally returning to the arms of Faith, his beloved wife. But when he pushed open the worn wooden gate and stepped into the yard, the scene before him made his heart stop. Faith was crouched near the small garden where her plants once grew, pulling clumps of grass with trembling hands and putting them in her mouth, chewing desperately. Her tears fell onto the dry soil as she didn't even notice his arrival. "Faith!" David shouted, dropping his backpack to the ground. She lifted her thin face, and when she saw him standing there in his camouflage uniform, she thought she was seeing a vision. Her eyes, once bright and full of life, were now sunken and dull. The body that had once been full of curves was now just skin and bones. "David," she whispered, still with bits of grass between her teeth. You're back?" Faith tried to stand quickly, ashamed of what her husband had just witnessed, but her weak legs betrayed her. David rushed to her and caught her before she fell. "My God, Faith! What happened to you? Why were you eating—" "Don't look at me like that," she cried, hiding her face in her hands. "I didn't want you to see me like this. I tried so hard to stay beautiful for when you came back." David held her tightly, feeling how drastically she had lost weight. He could feel her ribs through the old faded blouse she wore. "Tell me what happened. Where's our furniture? Where are your plants?" Faith broke down sobbing in her husband's arms. Between gasps, she began to tell a story that would leave David in shock for days. "The company where I worked shut down 3 months after you left," she said, wiping her nose on her sleeve. "I didn't want to tell you in the letters because I didn't want you to worry. I thought I'd find another job quickly." David led her inside the house and was even more stunned. The small living room was completely empty. No couch, no television, not even the table where they used to share meals. Just an old mat on the floor and a dented pot in the corner. "Faith, where are all our things?" "I had to sell everything," she replied, unable to meet his eyes. "First the TV, then the couch. In the end, only the fridge was left, but it broke, and I didn't have money to fix it." David sat on the floor and pulled his wife close. His hands trembled as he stroked her hair, which had once been long and silky, but was now cut short and brittle. "But I sent money every month. $50 wasn't much, but it was enough for you to get by until I came back." Faith lifted her red, tear-filled eyes. "What money, David? I never got anything." The world collapsed around David at that moment. For 2.5 years, he had saved every penny he could from his small stipend, sending it faithfully home every month. In the letters he wrote, he always asked if the money had arrived, and Faith had responded vaguely, never confirming or denying. "What do you mean you never got it? I sent it through the military bank every single month." "David, I swear to God I never saw a single cent. I went to the bank every week to ask, but they always told me there was nothing in my name." David felt rage building inside him, but he knew he had to take care of Faith first. She was clearly very sick and malnourished. "Have you eaten anything real today?" "Yesterday I managed to buy some stale bread at the bakery," she answered quietly. "But my stomach can't handle normal food anymore. I can only eat these leaves and herbs, I find." "But that's not food, Faith. It's what my body can accept now. At first I threw up everything, even water. Then our neighbor, Mrs. Martha, taught me about some plants that help." David stood up and went to the window, looking at the backyard where there used to be a small flower garden Faith tended with such care. Now only patches of grass and weeds remained. "Faith, why didn't you ask for help?" "Mrs. Martha, the church folks, anyone." "I did ask," she replied, wrapping herself in the only blanket left. "But every time someone offered food or money, I remembered your promise. You said you'd take care of me when you came back, that we'd rebuild our lives together. I didn't want to accept help because I knew you were struggling too, just to send me money." David turned to her with tears in his eyes. "So you chose to starve rather than accept help? I knew you'd come back, and I wanted you to see that I was strong, that I waited for you without depending on anyone." David knelt before his wife and held her thin hands. "Faith, you're the strongest woman I know, but you nearly killed yourself in the process." "I wasn't going to die. I learned to survive. Mrs. Martha taught me which plants aren't harmful, which have more nutrients. I became an expert at finding food in the wild." David's stomach churned, imagining what his wife had endured while he thought he was sending money home. "Faith, you need to see a doctor immediately." "I can't afford a doctor, David." "There's the health clinic." "I've gone several times. They gave me some stomach medicine, but it didn't help. The nurse said I need to eat properly, but how can I eat properly without food?" David realized Faith had fallen into a terrible cycle, too weak to work and unable to eat because she had no money for food. "How are you surviving financially?" Faith hesitated before answering. I collected recyclables, cardboard, cans, things like that." "You worked as a scavenger, only early mornings before it got too hot. I couldn't handle the afternoon heat. Made about $5 a week." David did quick math. $5 a week couldn't even buy a pound of rice. "Faith, how were you paying the household bills?" "I didn't," she admitted shamefully. "The electricity was cut off 4 months ago. Water 6 months ago. I got water from Mrs. Martha's house." David looked around and realized there was indeed no electric light in the house. Their entire conversation had been lit only by the fading daylight through the windows. "And the rent?" "I talked to Mr. Jack, explained my husband was serving our country and we'd pay everything when you returned. He understood." "How much back rent do you owe?" 2 years and 3 months, David quickly calculated. Over $1,000 in debt, an impossible sum given their financial reality. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. "Faith, I need to understand better how you survived all this time. Tell me everything from the beginning." Faith adjusted on the mat and began recounting her survival journey. "The first month after you left, everything was still normal. I had my company salary and thought you'd send money soon. When the company shut down, I rushed to find another job, but I couldn't get anything. The money we had saved lasted about 2 months. David remembered his savings. They had managed to set aside $300 before his departure. When the money ran out, I started selling our things. The first was the television. I got $100 for it." $100? "But it cost $500 when we bought it." "I know, but I needed money fast. With $100, I bought food for 2 weeks. Then I sold the stereo, the fan. Little by little, I sold everything." David pictured Faith leaving the house carrying their belongings to sell for next to nothing, and he felt a pain in his chest. "And the neighbors didn't offer help?" "They did. Mrs. Martha always brought a plate of food. Mr. Anthony from the corner offered work at his shop, but I didn't accept." "Why not?" "Because I didn't want anyone to know about our situation. You've always been so proud, David. I didn't want you to come back and find out I'd become the neighbor's charity case." David understood Faith's concern, but at the same time he was frustrated by her stubbornness. "Faith, pride doesn't fill an empty stomach, but it keeps your dignity, and dignity was all I had left." David realized his wife had spent the last 2 years fighting not just hunger, but the humiliation of depending on others. "And when did you start collecting recyclables?" "About 8 months ago. I was desperate, without even enough money to buy bread. I saw an older woman picking up cans on the street and asked her how it worked." "What was it like?" "I'd leave at 5 in the morning with a big bag. I'd go house to house collecting whatever I found. Cardboard, plastic bottles, cans. At the end of the week, I'd take it to the recycling center and they'd weigh it. It'd be about $5, $6 if I was lucky." David pictured Faith walking through empty streets at dawn, searching for recyclable trash just to buy food, and he wanted to cry. "And when did you start eating plants?" "About 4 months ago. My stomach was so bad I couldn't keep anything down. I'd even throw up water. Mrs. Martha took me to a woman who knows about medicinal plants. And she taught you?" "She taught me which ones aren't harmful, which ones help the stomach, which ones have vitamins. She said native people always knew how to live off the land, and that anyone could learn." David realized Faith had developed a primitive way of surviving, almost as if she'd gone back to ancient times. "Faith, you can't keep living like this. Your body is breaking down. I know I'm thin, but I'm alive. And now you're back, so everything will be okay. David admired his wife's unshakable faith, but he knew the situation was far worse than she wanted to admit. Tomorrow, we're going to the bank to find out what happened to the money I sent. You really think you sent it and it got lost? I'm sure. I kept all the receipts. I brought them with me. David opened his backpack and pulled out a folder with organized papers. They were bank transfer receipts, all addressed to Faith Johnson. Look here, every month, without fail. Faith took the papers with trembling hands and began to read. Her eyes filled with tears. David, you really sent all this? Of course I did. It was my duty to take care of you, even from afar. But where did that money go? That's what we'll find out tomorrow. Faith hugged David tightly. I knew you hadn't abandoned me. Sometimes in the hardest moments, I thought maybe you'd found another woman up in the Alaskan wilderness and forgotten about me. Faith, how could you think such a thing? I'm sorry, love, but when you're hungry, your mind thinks strange things. David held Faith's face between his hands. I spent 2.5 years counting the days until I could come back to you. There isn't another woman in the world I love besides you. They stayed silent for a few minutes, just holding each other, trying to absorb the reality of being together again. David, I have something to tell you, Faith whispered. What is it? I think I'm pregnant. David pulled back to look at her, making sure he'd heard right. What do you mean, you think? It's been 2 months since my last period. At first I thought it was because I was weak, but there are other signs. What signs? Morning sickness, the smell of food makes me nauseous. My breasts are sore. David stayed quiet, processing the news. A baby would be a blessing, but in their current situation it would also be a huge challenge. Have you taken a test? I don't have money to buy one. Tomorrow we'll get a test and go to the doctor. But if it's true, David, how will we raise a child when we don't even have food? We'll figure it out. Now that I'm back, things will change. Faith nestled into David's arms, feeling safe for the first time in months. I prayed so hard for you to come back before the baby was born. And your prayers were answered. I'm here now. They spent the night talking, with David trying to understand everything Faith had endured and her wanting to hear about his experiences in the Alaskan wilderness. David, what was the mission like? It was hard but necessary. We helped remote communities that had no access to anything. Doctors, schools, basic sanitation. It was like stepping back 100 years in time. Did you miss home? Every single day. Sometimes I'd stare at the stars and think of you. Wonder how you were, what you were doing. If only you knew. If I'd known, I would have found a way to come back sooner or send more money. Would your commander have allowed it? I don't know, but I would have tried. The next morning, David woke early and went out to handle the bureaucratic tasks. Faith stayed home, still too weak to join him. His first stop was the military bank where he'd sent the transfers. At the branch, he asked to speak to the manager. Good morning, I'm David Johnson. I need to clarify an issue with transfers I made to my wife. The manager, a middle-aged man named Frank, invited him into his office. What's the problem, Mr. Johnson? David explained the situation and showed the receipts. The manager checked the system, and after a few minutes turned pale. Mr. Johnson, I'm afraid I have very bad news. What news? The money you sent never reached your wife's account because of a system error. The transfers went to an account with a similar, but not identical number. David felt his blood boil. A system error? You sent my money to the wrong person for 2 years? It appears so. I'll see if we can trace where it went. After an hour of investigation, the manager returned with more information. Mr. Johnson, we've discovered that a bank employee was diverting transfers from military families for over a year. He altered account numbers in the system, so the money went to accounts he controlled. Where is this employee now? He was fired and is being prosecuted, but the money's already gone. He used it to pay gambling debts. David clenched his fists, struggling not to lash out. Do you have any idea what my wife went through because of this? Mr. Johnson, I understand your anger. The bank is aware of the issue and taking all legal measures. Legal measures won't give my wife back 2 years of suffering. I know, sir. But the bank is willing to compensate you financially for the losses. How? We can return all the money that was taken, with adjustments and interest, and we'll also offer compensation for emotional damages. David did a quick calculation. If he got all the money back with interest, it would be enough to pay off the debts and start over with Faith. How long will it take? About 15 days to sort out all the paperwork. And in the meantime, my wife doesn't even have food for today. The manager opened his desk drawer and took out $300 from his own pocket. Take this as an advance. It's from my own money. When the compensation comes through, we'll deduct it. David hesitated, but thinking of Faith, he accepted the money. Thank you, but this doesn't erase the suffering you've caused. I know, Mr. Johnson, and I apologize on behalf of the bank. David returned home with food and medicine. When he arrived, he found Faith talking with their elderly neighbor, Mrs. Martha. Faith, David, Mrs. Martha said when she saw him. How wonderful to see you back. Faith suffered so much in your absence. Did you know she was going hungry? Of course I did. I offered help many times, but she never accepted. Stubborn as a mule. She said she'd wait for you to come back. David looked at Faith with a mix of love and frustration. Mrs. Martha, I brought food. Would you like to have lunch with us? I'd love to, my dear. I'll make something delicious to help Faith regain her strength. While Mrs. Martha cooked, David told Faith what he'd discovered at the bank. So you really were sending money and someone stole it? Exactly, and the bank will compensate us. How long will it take? About 15 days, but I already brought money so we can start getting back on our feet. Faith cried with relief. I knew you hadn't abandoned me. I knew there had to be an explanation. Faith, you went through all this for nothing. If you'd just accepted help from the neighbors. I couldn't, David. My pride wouldn't let me. Pride is one thing, stubbornness is another. Mrs. Martha returned from the kitchen with a plate of rice, beans, and stewed chicken. Faith, eat slowly. Your stomach is sensitive. Faith took small bites, chewing carefully. David noticed she really struggled with solid food. Faith, we're going to the clinic this afternoon. There's no need, David. Now that you're back, I'll get better. Yes, there is. You're too thin, and you might be pregnant. Mrs. Martha perked up at the news. Pregnant? How wonderful. But you have to eat properly now. That afternoon, David took Faith to the health clinic. The doctor who examined her was shocked by her condition. Mrs. Johnson, you're severely malnourished. How long has it been since you ate properly? About 6 months, doctor. And why didn't you seek medical help sooner? I did, but they always just told me to eat well. How could I eat well without food? The doctor looked at David. Sir, your wife needs urgent nutritional care. Her body is too weak. Doctor, she thinks she might be pregnant. We'll run the tests, but if it's true, it will be a high-risk pregnancy. After the tests, the doctor confirmed the pregnancy. Congratulations, you're going to be parents. But Mrs. Johnson, you must take very good care of yourself. The baby is developing in a very weak body. What do I need to do, doctor? Eat small portions several times a day, take vitamins, rest, and weekly medical checkups. When they left the clinic, David hugged Faith on the street. We're going to have a baby. I'm scared, David. What if I can't take care of the baby properly? You will. You're not alone anymore. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. In the following weeks, David devoted himself entirely to caring for Faith and reorganizing their lives. With the money from the bank, he paid the overdue bills and bought basic furniture for the house. But David discovered that finding a job as a former military man wouldn't be easy. Many companies discriminated against those who had served, assuming they were troublesome or violent. Faith. It's hard to find work. Don't worry, David. Something will come up. But the money from the bank won't last forever. I need to find a source of income. David started working as a street vendor, selling water and soda at traffic lights. It wasn't what he had dreamed of, but it was honest work. David, You don't have to humiliate yourself like this, Faith said, when she saw him coming home sweaty and exhausted. It's not humiliation, it's survival, and it's temporary. One day, while selling at a stoplight, David was approached by a well-dressed man. Are you David Johnson? Yes, I am. Why? My name is Charles Miller. I heard about your story through a friend who works at the bank. Can we talk? David was suspicious but agreed to the conversation. I own a security company. I'm looking for honest, responsible former military men to work with me. What kind of work? Property security, escort services, surveillance, nothing illegal or dangerous, reputable companies that need qualified professionals. And the salary? $2,000 to start, plus benefits. David couldn't believe what he was hearing. Why are you offering this to me? Because I know you're a man of character, someone who sends money religiously to his wife for 2 years, even while far away, is someone I can trust. David accepted the offer and started working at Charles's company the following week. For the first time in a long while, he felt things were improving. With a steady paycheck, David was able to rent a better house for him and Faith. It wasn't a palace, but it had 2 bedrooms, a spacious kitchen, and a backyard where Faith could grow her herbs and spices. David, this house is a dream, Faith said, still amazed by the change. It's our fresh start, love. Here, our child will be born in a dignified home. Faith, with regular medical checkups and proper nutrition, began regaining her weight and health. Her belly grew week by week and David was moved every time he felt the baby kick. David, have you picked a name yet? If it's a girl, how about Hope? After everything we've been through. And if it's a boy, Victor, because he'll be the symbol of our victory over hardship. One day, David received an unexpected call. It was from the commander of his former military unit. David, how are you? I'm well, Commander. And you? I'm calling because I learned about the trouble you and your wife faced with the bank. I wanted to apologize on behalf of the armed forces. Commander, you're not to blame for what happened. But I am responsible for the well-being of our men's families. That's why I'm offering additional compensation. What kind of compensation? A home of your own through the military housing program. You're entitled to it, and I'll fast-track the process. David was speechless. Commander, is this for real? Absolutely. Within 6 months, you'll have the keys to your own home. When David told Faith, she cried with emotion. David, am I dreaming? If you are, I hope I never wake up. During her pregnancy, Faith developed a new passion, cooking. After spending so long unable to eat properly, she now dedicated herself to preparing tasty, nutritious meals. David, try this new recipe. What is it? Leaf soup. But not the leaves I ate when I was hungry. These are real leaves, kale, spinach, arugula. David took a bite and was surprised by the flavor. It's delicious. Where did you learn to make this? From Mrs. Martha. She taught me several recipes with greens and vegetables. She said I'd be a better mother if I knew how to cook well. David noticed that Faith was turning her traumatic experience into something positive. The knowledge about plants she had gained out of necessity was now becoming a culinary skill. Faith, have you ever thought about teaching cooking classes? Cooking classes? Me? Why not? You know plants and greens like no one else. You could teach healthy, budget-friendly recipes. The idea planted a seed in Faith's mind. She began researching and discovered there was a high demand for classes on natural and affordable eating. David, I spoke with the coordinator at the community center. She loved the idea for the classes. How would it work? Once a week in the afternoon, for mothers who want to learn how to cook on a budget. They'd pay $50 per class. Faith, that's wonderful. Some extra income would be really helpful. Faith started teaching the classes when she was 7 months pregnant. To her surprise, demand was huge. Soon, she had a waiting list of interested women. David, I never imagined the worst phase of my life could turn into something so positive. What do you mean? If I hadn't gone hungry, I would have never learned about plants and natural food. Now I'm teaching other women, and even making money from it. David admired his wife's wisdom. She had managed to turn trauma into opportunity. One day, while teaching at the community center, Faith was approached by a local journalist. "Hi, Faith. My name is Amy Parker. I'm a reporter for the local newspaper. Can I talk to you?" "Of course. About what?" "I heard your story from some of your students. I'd like to write a piece on resilience and female entrepreneurship." Faith hesitated. She didn't want her private life to become news. "I don't know, it's a very personal story." "I understand, but think about how your experience could inspire other women going through hardships." Faith discussed the proposal with David. "What do you think?" "I think it could be good. If your story helps others, it's worth it." The article was published a week later with the headline, "From Scavenger to Entrepreneur. Woman turns trauma into successful business." The impact was immediate. Faith received dozens of calls from women wanting to learn from her. She also got offers to teach in other neighborhoods and even other cities. "David, it seems I've become a bit of a celebrity. You deserve all the recognition, love. Your strength is inspiring." With the success of her classes, Faith decided to write a book on budget-friendly, nutritious recipes. David helped with organizing and typing. "Faith, what will you call the book?" "Kitchen Survival: How to Eat Well on a Budget." "I like the title. It's straightforward and explains exactly what the book offers." When Faith was 8 months pregnant, they finally received the keys to their own home. It was a simple house, but new and in a safe neighborhood. "David, I still can't believe this house is ours." "Yes, you can. And our son will grow up here, never knowing hardship." They moved in the following week. Faith insisted on planting a garden in the backyard of their new home. "Why a garden, Faith? We don't need it anymore." "Exactly why. I want to plant for pleasure, not necessity. And I want to teach our son where food comes from." David helped Faith plant lettuce, tomatoes, onions, and various herbs. It was comforting to see the garden now as a symbol of abundance, not desperation. "David, sometimes I wonder if everything we went through was necessary." "What do you mean? If I hadn't faced those struggles, would I have ever discovered my calling to teach? Would you have ever met Charles and landed this good job?" David reflected on the question. "I don't know, honey, but I do know our story proves that with love and determination, any difficulty can be overcome." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now continuing. At the end of the 8th month of pregnancy, Faith began feeling contractions. David rushed her to the hospital. "Doctor, is she okay? Isn't it too early?" "It's a bit ahead of schedule, but not premature. The baby has normal weight and development." After 12 hours of labor, Victor Johnson was born, a healthy boy weighing 7 pounds. "David, look at our son," said Faith, exhausted but radiant. David held the baby for the first time and cried with emotion. "He's perfect, Faith, our little Victor. Now I understand why I went through all of that. It was to reach this moment." David agreed. Holding his son in his arms, he felt every pain and struggle of the past years had been worth it. In the following months, David and Faith devoted themselves entirely to caring for Victor. Faith had to pause her classes temporarily, but continued writing her cookbook. "David, I finished the book." "Really? How many recipes made it in?" 200, all tested and approved by my students. "And now we find a publisher." David helped Faith send the manuscript to several publishers. 2 months later, they received a positive response. "Faith, there's a letter from Hope Publishing House." "What did they say?" David opened the letter and read aloud. "Dear Mrs. Faith, after reviewing your manuscript, Kitchen Survival, we are pleased to inform you that we would like to publish your book. We believe it will fill an important gap in the American publishing market." Faith screamed with joy, waking little Victor. "David, I'm going to be a published author." "You deserve it, honey. Your knowledge can help thousands of families." The book was released 6 months later and received an overwhelming response. Soon, Faith was giving interviews on local radio and TV programs. "Faith, how does it feel to be nationally recognized?" "It's surreal. 2 years ago, I was eating grass in my backyard. Today, I'm speaking to thousands on television." What's your message for women facing hardships? Never give up. Accept help when needed. and know that every experience, no matter how painful, can become a lesson and an opportunity. The book's success brought unexpected opportunities. Faith began receiving invitations to speak in other cities and even offers to franchise her cooking classes. David, what do you think about expanding the classes? I think it's great. The more women you help, the better. But I'm afraid of growing too fast and losing control. Then let's take it slow, sustainable growth. Faith decided to train other instructors to replicate her method in different neighborhoods. Within a year, she had 20 women working with her across 10 locations. David, look at what we've built. No, honey, look at what you built. I just supported you. We built it together. If you hadn't come back and given me strength, I never could have done it. David realized his wife had become a successful entrepreneur without losing the humility and simplicity that always defined her. One day, David came home from work and found Faith crying in the living room. What happened? I got a call today. From who? The bank employee who stole our money. He's in prison and wanted to apologize. David tensed up. And what did you say? That he forgave her. Forgave? Faith, he almost starved you to death. I know, David, but holding on to resentment would only hurt me. I'd rather use that energy to help others. David once again admired his wife's generosity of spirit. She had turned pain into growth, resentment into forgiveness. What else did he say? That his time in prison made him reflect on the harm he caused families, and that when he gets out he wants to work helping people in financial hardship. Do you believe him? I don't know, but I believe in people's ability to change when they truly want to. 2 years after Victor's birth, David received an unexpected offer from Charles. David, you know the security business well now. How about we become partners? Partners how? You'd come in as a minority partner in the company, a 20% stake. Charles, I don't have money to invest. You don't need to invest money. Your investment would be your experience and dedication. You've practically been running the company with me for 2 years. David talked to Faith about the offer. What do you think? I think you deserve this opportunity. You've always been so capable and honest. But what if it fails? What if it succeeds? Sometimes we have to take risks to grow. David accepted the partnership and discovered he had a talent for management. In no time, the company grew by 50%. Charles, our partnership is working out really well. I knew it would. You have something money can't buy, character. With their business success, David and Faith decided to have another child. Faith got pregnant easily, and this time the pregnancy was smooth from the start. David, this time I want it to be a girl. Why? To complete our family. A boy and a girl. And if it's another boy, I'll love him just the same. But I dream of a girl to wear the dresses I've knitted. During her second pregnancy, Faith wrote her second book, Motherhood and Work: How to Balance Career and Family. Faith, you're becoming a prolific writer. I have so much experience to share, and writing does me good. What's the next book going to be? I want to write our story from the beginning when you left for your mission, up to now. An autobiographical book? Yes, to show that it's possible to overcome any hardship. 9 months later, Hope Johnson was born, a healthy, beautiful girl. David, our family is complete now. Perfect. A boy and a girl, both healthy and happy. And to think a few years ago, I believed I'd never be a mother. Why did you think that? Because I was so weak and sick that I thought my body would never recover. David watched their 2 children playing in the backyard of their own home and felt immense gratitude. Faith, sometimes I wonder how we'd be if none of that had happened. How so? If I'd gotten the money normally, if you hadn't gone hungry, if we'd had a normal life. And what do you conclude? That we'd probably be more complacent. Maybe you'd never have discovered your talent for teaching. Maybe I'd never have become a businessman. Faith reflected on her husband's words. You're right. The hardships forced us to find strengths we didn't even know we had, and made us better people, stronger and more grateful for everything we have. David hugged Faith as they watched their children play. Faith, do you regret marrying me? Why would you ask that? Because of me? You went through so much suffering. David Johnson, listen well. I'd go through it all again if I knew I'd find you at the end. My love for you is what kept me alive in the hardest moments. I love you more than anything in this life too. And our children will grow up knowing that true love overcomes any obstacle. David remembered a thought he had during his mission in the Alaskan wilderness. Love is like a plant. It can endure storms, droughts, and pests, but if the root is strong, it always blooms again. Faith, our root was strong. And our fruits are right here, she said, pointing to Victor and Hope. 5 years later, David and Faith were managing a network of 40 budget cooking schools across the Southwest. Faith had become a national reference for healthy and affordable meals. David, sometimes I can't believe what we've built. It's the fruit of your hard work and dedication. Our hard work. You've always supported me in everything. David smiled, remembering the skeletal woman he'd found eating grass in the backyard. Now Faith was a respected businesswoman, a fulfilled mother, and a happy wife. Faith, do you remember the day I came back from my mission? How could I forget? The most shameful day of my life. For me, it was the day I realized I'd married the strongest woman in the world. It wasn't strength, David. It was desperation. No, it was strength. Anyone else would have given up, asked for help, or worse. You endured because you had an inner strength even you didn't know about. Faith hugged her husband. And you? You showed incredible strength too. Few men would have the patience to rebuild a life from scratch. I did it out of love, and because you deserved it. Their children, now 7 and 5 years old, ran up to them. Daddy, Mommy, can we plant more vegetables in the garden? Asked Victor. Of course, sweetheart. But why do you want to plant more? So Mommy can teach more recipes to other mums, answered Hope. David and Faith exchanged a glance and smiled. Their children had inherited their compassionate spirit and desire to help others. Let's do it, my loves. We'll plant and care for it together, said Faith. As they walked to the garden, David reflected on the journey they'd taken. From a backyard where his wife ate grass out of desperation, they'd arrived at an abundant garden where they planted out of love and solidarity. The grass that once symbolized hunger and humiliation now made way for vegetables and herbs that fed not just their family, but hundreds of others through Faith's teachings. David, said Faith, kneeling in the soft soil of the garden, I still remember the bitter taste of that grass I ate. How do you feel about it now? Grateful. If I hadn't tasted need, I'd never have learned to savor abundance. David knelt beside his wife and held her dirt-stained hand. Faith, you turned our tragedy into the greatest blessing of our lives. We turned it, David, together. The two planted side by side, their children helping. It was the perfect symbol of how they'd built a new life, with hard work, love, patience, and faith in the future. As the sun began to set, they sat on the porch, watching the garden they'd planted and their children playing in the yard. David, there's something I never told you. What is it? During those hardest days when I ate grass to survive, I talked to you. What do you mean? I pretended you were there with me. I'd say, David, look at the mess we're in, but you'll come home soon and we'll get through this together. David felt his eyes fill with tears. And me, up in the Alaskan wilderness, I talked to you every night before bed too. What did you tell me? That I was doing important work, but my heart was here at home, and that one day I'd come back to build a better life with you. And we did. We did so much more than I ever dreamed. Faith rested her head on David's shoulder. You know what I learned from all this. What? That true love isn't just for the happy moments. It's the love that endures through the hardest ones. And ours endured. More than endured, it grew stronger. David embraced Faith and felt his life was complete. They had a beautiful family, a thriving business, a home of their own, and most importantly, a love that had overcome every hardship. Faith, what would you say to a woman going through what you went through today? I'd say never give up. Accept help when you need it. Every storm passes. And sometimes we have to hit rock bottom to discover our true strength. What about pride? Pride that lets you go hungry isn't pride, it's stubbornness. True pride is overcoming struggles and helping others do the same. David smiled, admiring the wisdom his wife had gained through suffering. And you, David, what would you say to a man in your situation? That what matters most isn't how much you earn or what you can provide for your family. What matters most is being present, offering emotional support, and never giving up on the ones you love. Even when things seem impossible. Especially when they seem impossible. That's when true love shows itself. The end. And what about you, dear listener? What did you think of this story of resilience and love? Faith and David proved that even in the most desperate situations, it's possible to find the strength to start over. Share your thoughts in the comments and let us know where you're watching from. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel for more inspiring tales of overcoming adversity.